Good morning and welcome back to another agronomy update here. I'm Rachel Willis. I'm joined with Jim Donnelly here, and we have a couple topics that we want to cover. We're going to try to keep these a little bit quick, a little bit briefer. We'll see how we actually do. Just cover a few things and highlight what we're seeing in the field here. So we want to go over GDUs. We want to talk a little bit about what we're seeing from a disease update, a little bit of an aphid update, and then Jim will wrap us up with rootworm. So first up on GDUs, I pulled GDUs from Princeton, Illinois. I think last time Jim maybe pulled it from Rochelle. And if you remember last time we talked about this, we were actually tracking just a little bit ahead on GDUs. That was followed by a week of some cool temperatures. This week, when I pulled the GDUs for Princeton, it shows that we're just right there on track to be right even with our 30-year average. So when you look at the graph, it's maybe difficult to see here. You can tell that we were just a smidge behind our average for a few weeks. We were just a little bit above average, and now we're just kind of right on top of our 30-year average. So from a GDU standpoint, I think we're actually setting pretty good. I'm not really worried. Last week was really cool. It felt like we might be getting behind, but we really aren't. And I think that's good news.
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and kick off the disease update, and we'll start off with tar spot. Usually, that's what everybody's looking for and wanting to know. One thing I'll say is it sounds like we're just kind of starting to hear of some initial confirmations of tar spot in our geography. We have heard of some in the southeast part of the state that's been confirmed, but so far it's been pretty quiet up here. But talking with our colleagues at Advanced Crop Care, it sounds like they're just starting to find some initial lesions over the past several days. With that being said, it is still very rare. Really not seeing more than one or two lesions per field at most, the way it sounds, according to them. So again, still very rare. One thing that I would add is, as Rachel and I have been looking, and we covered this last agronomy update, there are still a lot of misidentifications that are occurring. You can kind of open up your social media feed and see a lot of things that aren't tar spot that are being claimed a tar spot, and here are some of those things. Especially on the left. Even us on some of these really young lesions, that can be hard to differentiate. You see a fair amount of young anthracnose lesions. So that first picture on the left, you can see just young anthracnose. Same with that second picture from the left. You can kind of see in the foreground. I forget if that's dirt, Rachel, or what, or
Yeah,
what
I
you
was
said that
trying to
was
get the
in the
dirt
in
and
the
I
foreground.
got the
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But I think the point is, we have seen a lot of anthracnose early on, and that has kind of led to a lot of misidentification early this year. That third picture, again, another example, that's leaf miner. And so a lot of people see the actual larvae. So on the far left side of that third picture from the left, that's actually the larvae that's tunneling through the leaf, and it looks black. It can be kind of raised. It won't wash off because it's within the leaf, so that can be confusing. But in that instance, the dead giveaway is the clear translucent track behind it, which is actually uh, yeah, the larvae. And then the far picture to the right, that is typical insect or fly frass. That's what we run into. That's, pictures that we get a lot. That is what, if you wet the leaf, either spit on it or whatever, and you rub it, firmly, it will come off. The other thing is that the color of those are very black, kind of a flat black, and they are different when you hold it side by side to the tar spot lesions.
Yeah, sometimes it's almost a little bit shiny,
Yep.
if you look at it at the right light. The other thing I would add on anthracnose that Jim and I talked about earlier when we were kind of prepping for this was when you get a small anthracnose lesion, A lot of times it's kind of the inverse of tar spot. So it's light tan in the middle, and then you see kind of a really dark brown, black around the edges. Whereas with tar spot, a lot of times it's dark black, and then you can see that little tan around the edges. So it's almost the inverse there of tar spot and anthracnose leaf blight when it's pretty small. These pictures here are probably past that stage where you don't see that quite as much anyway.
Exactly. You want to flip to the next one?
There you go.
Yeah. So just as a reminder, this is what tar spot will look like very early on, and I think we get a lot of questions about some of the other things that are in this leaf. So, or in this picture, if you look in the far left, you have that tannish look to it. I think a lot of people will think that that will eventually turn into what you see in the middle, and that's not the case. So it will always start off with that, very dark lesion, and usually it becomes raised virtually right away. So a lot of the other stuff you see in there will not likely become tar spot.
Yeah, get out your handy hand lens. I love a good hand lens. It'll make it a lot easier. So one thing that I have been seeing in my geography, especially, I'm not sure if Jim's seen it quite as much. I have pockets where I've been finding some bacterial leaf streak. I just wanted to bring it up because if you walk into a field, it's usually kind of centered in a small area, but it can look like it's pretty intense pressure. So this was actually taken from this year. That last picture on the tar spot, that was from the previous year. This is from this year, and it looks pretty severe. I don't want you to walk out and see this and think that you have just like horrendous gray leaf spot, because I think sometimes bacterial leaf streak can get confused with gray leaf spot, and rightly so. So I have two pictures, and one of them is backlit. So as soon as I see this, I'll pull the leaf off and I'll hold it up to the light, and I look for kind of that little bit of a halo around it. And when it's backlit, it looks different than gray leaf spot. But the other thing you can see there is it has a little bit wavy margins, whereas gray leaf spot will be really very blocky. But when it's not backlit, that other picture is the same thing but not backlit, and it does look very different. So I would encourage you, if you go out, you see this, pull a leaf and hold it up to the light. That'll help you kind of diagnose it a little bit. But just a reminder, fungicides aren't going to control anything that's bacterial. So don't go out there and order, think that you have a ton of gray leaf spot and call the airplane, because you probably should call an airplane here soon. We're getting
Yeah,
close to that time of year, but it's not going to do anything for your bacterial leaf streak. It's spread through like rain splashing. We had plenty of that, so it's not shocking to see it. It survives in residue. So where I've seen it has actually been more corn on corn. I'm not saying that you won't see it on rotated acres. I've seen a little bit on rotated acres, but it does seem like I'm seeing more in that corn on corn, which absolutely makes sense.
yeah,
So it's not a big deal. Actually, it's not. We haven't seen well documented cases of severe yield penalties to it right now, but I just want you to be aware when you walk out there, you'll probably find it.
yeah. It's definitely something that has increased over the years.
Yep.
In I don't want to say in severity, but in frequency. We definitely seen it more and more as the years go on. One thing, another bacterial disease that you may be familiar with is Goss's wilt. And one differentiator is with this one, it doesn't require wounds to get into the plant. It actually comes in through stomates, so you don't really need a hailstorm or anything to cause that. It's perfectly capable of entering the plant by itself. So just one differentiator between those two.
Yeah, I would say the second differentiator is probably the yield piece on it. So if you have really severe Gosses, that's a pretty bad day. If all of this was Goss's infection, I would be a lot more worked up over it. So, of the two, I would rather walk out and see bacterial leaf streak.
100%. All right, so one additional one that we're going to talk about is northern corn leaf blight, and actually we're seeing a little bit more of that this year than normal, probably by this stage. especially further north into my territory. I know Rachel said that she's seen a little bit of it, but we're seeing, I would say, more lesions and more well-developed lesions in our geography. And so, yeah, I would say this one, at this stage in the game, we're a little bit more concerned about than even tar spot, just with the level of disease that we're seeing. You can see in the picture there, this was taken by Bryce Sandahl, sales agronomist up in Northwest Illinois. And there you can see two lesions on the leaf, characterized by those long cigar-shaped lesions, and these will continue to get larger as time goes on. Um, I would say seeing this level of disease this early, in the growing season, or this, soon before tassel emergence, definitely something to watch out for. If this is shoulder high corn and we're seeing, this amount of northern corn leaf blight already, it's definitely something that I would consider, wanting to put a fungicide application on come tassel time.
All right, so another topic that I'll be honest, I kind of hate talking about aphids, but we're going to talk about aphids really quickly. Um, my coworkers to the south have been finding aphids, corn aphids, for I don't know, maybe a week or so. Jim, does that
Yep.
sound about right?
Yep.
And they have corn that's further along. They're finding stuff kind of right pre-tassel with pretty heavy infestation. I have not found aphids in my geography. I don't think that Jim's really seen much for aphids in his geography. So we don't want to alarm anybody, but I do want to remind you that as you're out scouting for a tar spot and you're out scouting for northern cornleaf blight, make sure that you're pulling some of those whorls. It's a good idea to go out there and see how close you are to tassel anyway, so you can schedule your fungicide, but make sure you're pulling whorls, really looking hard for those aphids so that we can make sure that we catch them at the right time if they do come in. So when you think about controlling them, I think it goes back to sort of the same discussion on disease actually. Use the right product, use the right time, and then make sure that you're using the right rate. So if you do find them, if we start finding, we'll talk a little bit more about products and rate. I don't want to go into a really in-depth discussion when we don't have them right now, but just make sure that you're looking for them and let us know if you do find them.
Yeah, and I was just going to add from an additional insect standpoint, we are starting to see corn rootworm beetles in our geographies. This this wasn't one from the ones that I saw yesterday, but uh, had to use a stock photo for something. So you generally remember that the males emerge first. The one I saw yesterday was a female, but just in general, on average, the males tend to emerge first. And that picture there is of a male. So remember, those males have solid black backs, and the females will be yellow with black stripes on the back. That's how you differentiate. One thing that I would just add is, if you're walking in and you're seeing numerous beetles, that's your indication to dig, and look for rootworm injury, and just kind of assess your control tactics that you've implemented. And then lastly, obviously, what we're most concerned about at this point, other than looking at injury early on, is making sure that these beetles don't hinder pollination. So we're a little bit from seeing silks in commercial corn anyway, but once that happens, we want to make sure that we're out scouting, hopefully when it's cooler, and making sure that they're not clipping silks to hinder pollination. So look for more beetle emergence as time goes on, especially as if we were to get some more rain, soften the dirt, that tends to increase beetle emergence as well. But just make sure we're looking for those.
All right, so the last thing that we'll cover here is soybeans. If you watched our last episode, this is just a recycled slide where I talked a little bit about seeing some Phytophthora root rot. It's not surprising we're seeing more Phytophthora root rot. However, I would say in my geography, I think it's the same for Jim's geography. We have just big patches of yellow, ugly soybeans. Those aren't all Phytophthora. In those, I've walked out in a couple of those, just kind of ugly patches. there is Phytophthora out there, but the whole thing isn't Phytophthora. In a lot of cases, it's just beans don't like setting in wet feet, and that's what we've had here. So as we start to dry out, I think that we will see some improvement there. So you probably have some Phytophthora out there potentially, but I think that really our beans are just, they're just wet and they're not very happy. So that kind of wraps it up. Like I said, we were going to attempt to keep it a little bit shorter. I don't know if we actually did, but
I
you
don't
know,
know. I have no idea.
key messages that like, we want you to walk away with. Remember that it's I know that we've all been scouting for tar spot. Continue to scout for tar spot. Make sure that you're looking at that you're identifying it correctly. Don't be fooled by all of the other things. Take note of those other things that you see out there, but just understand that make sure that those other things don't fool you into thinking that you have really bad tar spot out there. Watch for northern cornleaf blight when you're out there scouting as well. Look for aphids when you're out there. Pull those tassels. Really break apart the unfurl all the tassels, all the leaves on the tassel, and count the leaves anyway. Make sure that you're planning on your fungicide. Look for aphids. Rootworm is underway now, so as you're out in the field, pay attention to how many beetles you're seeing out there, and maybe dig up a few roots. And then lastly, there are some really, really ugly beans out there. I think they're going to improve though. I don't think that it's a Phytophthora root rot disaster out there. I think we just need a little bit of heat and we need to dry up a little bit. So
A little bit of heat and oxygen will go a long ways, I think.
that's right. Jim, anything you want to add?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, thanks for joining today, guys. Have a good day.
Thank you.